Dustin Long joined me on the Sports Buffet podcast. You can read him at si.com. He's on Twitter. You can find him all over the place covering the great sport of NASCAR. Dustin joined me to preview the race at Richmond on Saturday. It's the last race before we hit the chase. And I asked Dustin, if you've got two or three guys with the most pressure on them entering Saturday, who are they?
Well, I think, there's essentially about 8 guys that still have at least a mathematical shot to make the chase, but I think when you really look at it, it's really going to come down to, Kyle Busch versus Jeff Gordon for the final spot. The top 9 in points have already clinched the chase spot. Tony Stewart in 10th has clinched at least a wild card spot. So at least 10 of the guys that are going to be in the chase. Casey Kane's got 2 wins. It would take a lot for him to fall out of a wild card spot or a chase spot. So essentially he's in. So then you're looking at, the guys with 1 win. You're looking at, Kyle Busch and Jeff Gordon. Kyle Busch has got a 12-point lead on Jeff Gordon. And, other guys are further back that it's going to take a lot to get them in. Paul Menard, Ryan Newman, Marcos Ambrose. Obviously Carl Edwards doesn't have a win. You would need a win for some different things to happen. So I think when you look at it, that, forget about the 43 cars out there. If you're looking at just the chase, it's basically a 2-car race. And it's Kyle Busch versus Jeff Gordon. And history would state that Kyle Busch is going to make the chase, and Jeff Gordon's going to miss it for the second time in his career. Kyle Busch's career average finish at Richmond is 4.7, and in the 15 races that Kyle Busch and Jeff Gordon have raced against each other at Richmond, only once has Jeff Gordon finished more than 12 spots, 12 points ahead of Kyle Busch. Only finished ahead of him by 12 or more spots. So Jeff's got a lot of things, he's got to face. Obviously, if he wins, he gets in, and he's won at Richmond before, but you have to think back. The last time Jeff Gordon won at Richmond was actually when Dale Earnhardt was still alive, so back in 2000. So it's been a while, a big hill to climb for Jeff Gordon, and the odds would say that there's a good chance that he won't make it.
Do you give a realistic shot to any of those guys that you mentioned, Menard, Newman, Ambrose, of getting the W?
Not really. On paper, no. I don't think they have a chance at all. That's the beauty of Saturday night, is that, they're going to run 400 laps, 300 miles. Anything's possible. But, Kyle Busch's worst finish at Richmond is like a 20th. He's only finished outside the top 10 twice in his career. And those guys, like you said, Marcos, Newman, and some of those other guys, they need Kyle to finish essentially further back, well outside the top 10 to have a shot at it and to gain the points that they need. So on paper, like I said, it really looks like it's Kyle Busch versus Jeff Gordon, and it really looks like Kyle Busch is going to get in the chase. But again, that's the beauty of it. You don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, the bunch over Joe Gibbs Racing, the 18 crew, they had engine problems earlier this season. They had 3 straight races where they had engine problems. If something like that happens, then it's a wide open chase race, and then certainly it gets exciting for that last spot. It certainly could be exciting with Kyle and Jeff going at it, but I think what's going to have to happen is basically this is Kyle's chase spot to lose. And there's going to have to be, some kind of mechanical malfunction or some kind of accident or something like that that's going to prevent him from making the chase. I don't foresee somebody outrunning him by enough to make the chase.
If Jeff Gordon doesn't make it, is there one moment or one point to where he can look at it and say, yeah, this is where I didn't make it? Is there that one signature moment or race?
Well, I think there's different points in the season that he looked back on. He might look back at at last weekend's race in Atlanta, and maybe as he stayed after race, maybe he should have been more aggressive with Denny Hamlin on that last lap, trying to make a move to kind of move Denny out of the lead, so Jeff could win. But I think Jeff, the biggest one I think a lot of people would go back and look at is the Martinsville Spring race, where Gordon was leading on late restart, and side by side with Jimmy Johnson in position to win that race, and then going into turn 1 on the restart, Clint Boyer makes that bonsai move at the bottom. They go 3 wide. Boyer comes up the track, gets into Gordon, gets into Johnson. They kind of spin and get out of shape, and that opens the door for Ryan Newman to get into the lead, and then Ryan Newman holds off A.J. Allmendinger off the last restart and goes on and wins the race. So that gave Ryan Newman hope and a chance to make the chase, and it took away an opportunity for Jeff because if Jeff wins that race, it gives him 2 wins, and he's in a lot better shape to make the chase than he would be right now.
As we get into the chase with the guys that are definitely going to make it, who would you buy stock in, and who would you maybe not be so anxious to buy some stock in?
Well, I think for a lot of people that are going to buy stock in Jimmy Johnson, just the fact that he's won it 5 times, even though he didn't win it last year, that he's still looked upon as the premier driver, and certainly he's been strong as of late and had some really good runs, and he's a guy to keep an eye on. Denny Hamlin's won 2 straight, goes into Richmond. That's a great track for him. Hey, he can make it 3 straight. But I think the question with Denny Hamlin is, if you look at his record all season, he'll go a couple races with top 5s, top 10s, and the next couple races he'll go with finishes outside the top 10, top 15 or so. And he's had that inconsistency all season. So he has not shown that consistency. Right now he's he's a hot guy, and I think more people will be talking about him if he wins, particularly at Richmond this weekend. But it's about 10 races, and you've got to have some stronger consistency. You can't afford too many finishes outside the top 10. Stewart finished, I think, 25th at Dover in the chase last year, but he was able to offset that with an incredible streak of 5 wins. You're not going to see a guy win 5 out of 10 races most of the time. So, I think Hamlin will be interesting. Dale Jr. has been a guy who's put himself in position a good number of times. 17 top 10s. That ties with Jimmy Johnson for most of the season. So there's the consistency. I think the thing you want to see out of Dale Jr. is the ability to win a race, 2 races, things like that, put himself in good position. You've seen it at times, but not all the time. So I think there's a question there. On guys that you don't buy stock in, I know Kevin Harvick had a really good run last week at Atlanta, but, for the most part, has not shown a whole lot. They've kind of been maybe a 7th to 12th place car, and then had some other finishes where they haven't been strong. And I think you're going to have to be better than that to win the chase. So, Kevin Harvick's hope is that maybe he's this year's Tony Stewart. Nobody gave much credence to Tony, winning the chase. And he came out of, in essence, nowhere. I mean, certainly the first race of the chase last year was a big thing for Tony. I mean, because he won at Chicago on a fuel mileage gamble. It wasn't a big gamble for them because they weren't running well, and they thought, well, why not roll the dice? Let's see what happens. Suddenly they win. Things pick up. They go to New Hampshire afterwards. It's a track that they're really strong at. They get, they have greater success there. It helps them offset the Dover problems that they had, and then they started running well at the mile and a half and really picked it up. So, that Chicago race, maybe that plays into Harvick's, if he's going to have a chance, is that they need a roll of dice, a fuel mileage gamble, and to work out, and then maybe kind of picks them up. But, I'm not seeing that strong type of championship contender. And, it'll be interesting to see what the Michael Waltrip racing cars do. It's the first time Waltrip's cars have been in the chase. You thought it really looked like Truex was going to win a race in the spring. Very strong, consistently strong, and then they kind of fell back a little bit. Certainly a great run, looked to be in position to win in Atlanta. It was really his best run in a while. Certainly he's had some consistency, been in the top 12, I think, the last 5 or 6 races. But hasn't been as, that guy who's been leading laps the whole time, been right up the front. So, be interesting to see what he does, but I think, there's still more to see out of Boyer and Truex at that Waltrip team.
Couple more questions for Dustin Long. If you had to maybe pick a spoiler this week that really has no implications in the chase whatsoever, but could just ruin things for anybody hoping to get there, is there a guy this week at Richmond?
Well, Denny Hamlin has won, I think, 2 of the last 3 fall races there, so he's already clinched a chase spot, but certainly a win there, and it impacts the guys trying to win a race there to get into the wild card spot. So he's a guy that I can see having great success and potentially taking that win, and if that's the case, for Kyle Busch, that's not a big deal as long as he's ahead of Gordon or only behind Gordon by a few points. I think Kyle's going to get in. So, I think Hamlin would be definitely a guy to keep an eye on. Somebody else that, I don't know if there's anybody else that really kind of comes to mind that's outside that chase spot. as somebody to kind of keep an eye on. I think that I think I probably just still look at Denny Hamlin as the guy, and I don't know if too many of the guys racing for the wild card spot. I don't know if too many of them had great success at Richmond or really contended for race wins. So I think it's an uphill battle. And that's why I go back to I think it's Kyle Busch versus Jeff Gordon, because I don't really foresee any of those other guys who have a mathematical chance really pulling out the win unless something crazy or bizarre happens.
Are there any changes you would make to the chase? Because a lot of people I've talked to, and my opinion included, I kind of wish they would end it somewhere other than Miami, kind of a maybe long-time NASCAR spot like in Atlanta or Charlotte or something like that. And then number two, could you ever see them throw in kind of a road course at the chase towards the end?
Well, I think Miami gets some, the Homestead area, they can put all their stuff in Miami. It's like Glitz City, as opposed to, Charlotte, finishing the season, when you finish the season in Atlanta, you're like 20 miles from Atlanta. It's a long drive. You have to deal with the traffic. Now, certainly you have those issues in Miami, but, in Miami you've got South Beach, and you can have the parties on South Beach and things like that. It's about a glitz. It's about a destination. I mean, sometimes they have some of their press gatherings and things like that over on South Beach. Last year, I think the press conference was over on South Beach, so they could say, hey, NASCAR's on South Beach, even though the track is, an hour and a half away because of all the traffic. So, for that standpoint, I think they feel like they need to be in a major metropolitan market. I mean, that's why the banquet is in Vegas. It's a glitzy place. It's a destination place. It's a place people want to go and have fun at. And maybe not as expensive as what New York used to be, and they didn't feel like New York was too big in the sense that New York maybe, they did some things for NASCAR, but it wasn't like NASCAR was just one of many things going on there. When NASCAR comes to Vegas, NASCAR is the thing there for a few days. So I think it's partly about that. As opposed to road courses, my personal feeling on a road course is that if you put if you have only two road courses and you put one into the chase, then that means you only have one in the regular season. So a road course matters only 1/26th of importance during the regular season because it's one of 26 races, yet it's going to be 1/10 importance for a championship. So it's going to be significantly mean more in the chase. And I don't agree with that. And I just think that as long as they got two road courses, there's no need to put a road course in the chase. If they add a third road course, then the proportion becomes a little bit closer. Then it would make sense to put a road course in the chase. But if you're only going to have two road course races and only one's going to be in the regular season, one's in the chase, that just gives too much value, too great a weight on the one in the chase. And I don't think that's. I haven't been convinced, and I'm not convinced that that's the right way to go.
And then if you add a race, you've got to take one away. And I don't know. I mean, is NASCAR really looking to kind of play addition and subtraction with their races, or are they pretty much set, you think?
Well, I mean, it's a possibility. I don't know if I don't think there's been a whole lot of talk about that's going to happen for next year. Obviously, the schedule's not out yet, but I think the expectation is that if realistically, if you're going to add Montreal, or Road America, because those are owned by different groups, and they're not owned by groups as much that own other tracks in the U.S. that NASCAR races at, you're going to have to take one away from somebody, and that impacts their bottom line. It's not like if you're moving a track from, an ISC track, moving a race from one ISC track to another, it stays within the family. Dover and Pocono have already announced their dates for next year, so they're not losing any dates or anything like that. ISC SMI is not going to take dates away from their track, so, you're not going to see that for next year. I just don't know until, unless one of those ISC or SMI buys into those tracks, takes full ownership of those facilities or those dates or things like that, I'm not sure you're going to see that. And I just think it just comes down to money and things like that. And as long as everybody's got what they've got, happy with what they got, I don't think you're going to see any changes.
Final question for you, Dustin. Always appreciate your time. We'll do it again throughout the chase, hopefully. There's been a lot of movement this week and in the past few weeks, too, with guys already setting up their rides for next year. Any surprise you, and are there any that you think could be really good or really not as good as people think for a new team next year?
No, I don't think, a whole lot of surprises. Obviously, with the big surprise was earlier this year when Matt Kenseth announced he wasn't going to be returning to Roush Fenway Racing. I mean, people knew his contract was up. The expectation was, since he'd been there so long, that he'd probably just stay there. So I think that caught a lot of people up, or surprised people in that sense. Obviously, the best rider out there is Joe Gibbs Racing. That was available. So, yes, you've got a 40-year-old Matt Kenseth replacing a 22-year-old Joey Logano. On paper, it's like, wow, that's lopsided. And when you look at the future of your organization, but it's about winning. It's about winning now. And Kenseth has the opportunity to deliver a lot of race wins and championships. Logano hasn't done that at Joe Gibbs Racing. Obviously, Gibbs would love to keep him because you hate to give up on somebody you've helped develop the last few years and has the potential to still be in the sport for another 20 years. But, without having the sponsorship and being able to put a full cup deal together, it's not surprising that Joey would go over to the 22 when that opened up after Allmendinger's issues, and after the issues last year with Kurt Busch. So, those are not surprising moves. Stuart Haas Racing, keeping Ryan Newman. Although the thing is that's only a one-year deal. I mean, obviously, that's a sign about there's some sponsorship issues over there. Obviously, the 39 team with Newman's team that lost the U.S. Army for next year, and then the recent announcement of Office Depot leaving, Tony Stewart's team after this season. So there's a lot of money that that organization's got to find for next year. I think that, they're able to keep moving. I'm sure it's probably a reduced salary per se because there's not as much sponsorship money there. A one-year program, try to keep him there and try to keep that team running and hope that you can get some sponsorship the following year and have a longer-term deal after next season. But, in that sense, it wasn't like there was any place else for Ryan Newman to go. Now the question is what happens, what happens to Kurt Busch? What happens to Brian Vickers? Is there a spot for them? Does Busch remain at Phoenix Racing with James Finch? If not, where does he go? What happens with Brian Vickers? He's done the 8 races. It will do the 8 races this year for Michael Waltrip Racing Cup. Obviously, like to do more. Does he still do the 8 there? Does he maybe pick up some nationwide rides somewhere else? Could he, because the Toyota relationship, kind of find a seat with Joe Gibbs Racing in their nationwide program next year? It seems like Elliott Sadler appears to be headed over there. That might be maybe the bigger surprise, I guess, in the last couple of weeks is Sadler, doing as well as he's doing in the Nationwide Series, leaving Richard Childress Racing after this season. But, if he's headed over to Joe Gibbs Racing for their nationwide program, that's not a bad move either. So, those are probably the 2 top nationwide programs. And for Sadler, he probably looks at the future of Childress and knows, with the Dillon boys coming up, that, that's the future of Richard Childress Racing. Not as much as Elliott Sadler. So, there may have been the case that Elliott just felt like he just didn't feel like that, when the music stopped there at Childress, there might not be the seat that he wanted in the future, and thought, well, maybe his best opportunity is at Gibbs. Only 3 cars, but maybe they've got a better shot at going up to a 4th car and see what happens there.
Maybe we could put enough coins together, Dustin, and put our face on the side of a car and be a sponsor.
I think I need a little bit more. I'm counting on you to contribute a lot to that then, because I don't know how much I would be able to contribute.
Yeah, I don't know how much people would appreciate my copper, so we'll have to probably pass on that. But as always, Dustin, appreciate your time, and we'll do this again very soon.
All right, sounds good.